Hi class, how are you today? Okay, well, let's sit down and have a rational conversation about this. The learning target for today is to be able to multiply and divide rational expressions. For the scale, you're a 3 if you can multiply and divide rational expressions. You're a 2 if you can multiply and divide rational expressions if they are all monomials and binomials. You're a 1 if you can multiply and divide rational expressions if they are already fully factored. And you're a 0 if you cannot multiply and divide rational expressions. Let's get started. All right, so first we're going to start with multiplying rational expressions. And so I want you to simplify and state the excluded values. So just like we did with simplifying rational expressions, when you're simplifying multiplying rational expressions, I want you to state the excluded values. And like last time, we'll deal with that at the end. So first, you have two fractions. I would start off by reducing them right away. You could multiply them all out, but it would end up giving you stuff that you would have to reduce later on and much bigger numbers that you have to deal with. It's, in my opinion, easiest to deal with the reducing right at the beginning. Then when you get on to the multiplying, you end up with simple stuff that you can multiply and all the reducing is done and you don't have to reduce anymore. So let's reduce right at the beginning. So 8 over 6, that can reduce. The 8 can turn into a 4, and the 6 can turn into a 3. Divide them both by 2. The x's, so we have x over x to the 5th. Remember, we say that there's a 1 there when there's nothing there. 1 minus 5 is negative 4, so the 4 would be on the bottom, and this x would go away. So this would turn out to be x to the 4th. Then over in the other fraction, we can do the same thing. 5 over 4 can't reduce, so that has to stay the way it is. But x to the 3rd divided by x, again, there's a 1 here. 3 minus 1 is 2. So this can go away, and the 3 becomes a 2. Now, we can also cross-reduce. So since we're multiplying, all this stuff is going to end up being all the top on the top, all the bottom on the bottom. So we can do cross-reducing right away as well. And it works the same way. Notice we have a 4 on the top and a 4 on the bottom. Those can both cancel out. Then for the exponents, we have x squared over x to the 4th. So 2 minus 4 is negative 2, so we end up with a 2 on the bottom. So this all goes away, and this 4 now becomes a 2. So now we put everything where it is. So the first fraction has nothing on top, so that's 1. And the second fraction on top has a 5. 1 times 5 is 5. And on bottom, the first fraction has 3x squared. The second has nothing, so 1. 3x squared times 1 is 3x squared. So that's our answer. We do have to state the excluded values, though. So when x does not equal, and we have to look back, and if we look, 6x to the 5th and 4x, both of those, the only way you would get 0 in the denominator would be when x equals 0. So this is true when x does not equal 0. And this is our full answer. All right, for the second one, I always find that it's easiest to factor everything first. If there's anything you can factor it. and then rewrite everything else, and then you can reduce. So the numerator in the first fraction, m squared minus 12m plus 20, what two numbers multiply to 20 that add to negative 12? That would be negative 10 and negative 2. So that'll give you m minus 10 times m minus 2 over m minus 10, and then the 8m over m minus 2 stays, because there's nothing to factor in those. Now you can reduce or cancel stuff out. So m minus 10 over m minus 10, those two can cancel. And then m minus 2 on top and an m minus 2 on bottom. Even though they're on different fractions, you can still cross-reduce. So those cancel as well. And the only thing that's left is 8m. Now we do still have to do the excluded values. So when x is not equal to, and the things in the denominator are m minus 10 and m minus 2. So in, very important key, make sure that's when m equals, not x. So when m does not equal, so we're looking at m minus 10 and m minus 2. Things that would make the denominator 0 would be 10 and 2. So when m does not equal 10 or 2. And so this is our full answer. All right, now let's deal with dividing rational expressions. So again, simplify and state the excluded values. The first thing I would suggest doing here is factor everything. So just like you did before, factor everything first, then we'll deal with the division. So, in the first fraction, on top, what two numbers multiply to 7 that add to negative 8? That would be r minus 7 and r minus 1. On the bottom, what two numbers multiply to 56 that add to negative 15? That would be r minus 7 and r minus 8. And then divided by r minus 1 over r plus 6. Now that it's fully in factored form, we can deal with the division. So with the division, what we're going to do is dividing is just multiplying by the reciprocal. So if you multiply by the reciprocal of a fraction, that's the same thing as dividing. So we can rewrite all this exactly the way we have it. R minus 7 times r minus 1 over r minus 7 times r minus 8. And now we're multiplying by the reciprocal, the fraction flipped. So multiplied by r plus 6 over r minus 1. And I'm going to move down. And so now we can start canceling stuff out. So r minus 7 over r minus 7, those are the same. Those can cancel. We have an r minus 1 on top and an r minus 1 down bottom, again in different fractions, but they still cancel out. And so we're left with, on top, r plus 6, and on bottom, r minus 8. And that's the answer, but we have to get the excluded values. And this is when things get a little bit more difficult. So when r does not equal, and we go back to the factored form, and we look at everything in the denominator. So everything in the denominator there would be 7, because r minus 7, so 7 would give you 0. 8 would also give you 0, r minus 8, so 8 minus 8 is 0. And r plus 6, so that would be negative 6. And then after we divided, we flipped, and now the r minus 1 is on bottom as well. So we have to do that as well, so that would be 1. So all of these are values of r that do not work. So you have to check before and after the division for values that don't work. All right, on this next one. So this one is where we're going to have to do a lot of common factoring. Again, just like before, let's factor everything out first. So 24k plus 80, you can divide 8 out of both of those. And what's left on the inside is 3k plus 10. On the bottom, you can divide 9 out of both of those. And what's left over is 3k plus 10. And divided by 42k plus 18. You can divide 6 out of both of those. And what's left over is 7k plus 3. And on the bottom, you can divide 9 out of those. And what's left over is 7k plus 3. Now, you probably can see some reducing you can do right away, even without the division. And that's fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. I like to flip it first and then do all my reducing. But to each their own. It might make some less writing if you do the reducing first. But I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to move down bottom and rewrite all of this. 8 times 3k plus 10 over 9 times 3k plus 10 times, and then we flip the other one. So 9 times 7k plus 3 over 6 times 7k plus 3. Now, as you can probably easily tell, 3k plus 10 on top and bottom can cancel out. 7k plus 3 on top and bottom can cancel out. Also, we have 9 on top and bottom on different fractions, but they still also cancel out. And then 8 over 6. So those can reduce. 8 and 6 can both be divided by 2. That would leave us with a 4 and a 3. So what we're left with is 4/3. Again, don't forget for the excluded values. So when k is not equal to, and so we looked at the factored form first, and we see 3k plus 10. So if you can't figure it out right away in your head, feel free to set up an equation where 3k plus 10 equals 0 and solve for k. You would end up getting negative 10/3. And then do the same thing for 7k plus 3. So that would end up giving you negative 3 over 7. And when you flip, you end up with the same things on bottom, so those are the only excluded values. So that is your final answer. Now time for the sponge activity. Just like in the problems, I want you to simplify and state the excluded values. For number 1, we're multiplying 7 over 8x squared minus 40x times x squared minus 14x plus 45 over x minus 9. And number 2, 3y over y minus 6 divided by 6y squared plus 3y over 8y plus 4. That's it for the lesson. Please make sure to take notes on the entire video, take a picture of everything, submit it to Doodle Classroom, and have a good night.